Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Experience Grad York session. Everything you need to know about applying for grad school that they didn't tell you. Today we have Alice MacLachlan, Vice-Provost and Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies, presenting the session. Alice, over to you.
Thank you so much, Eileen. And thank you to all of you for coming and spending a little bit of your afternoon with me in order to talk about the process of applying to graduate school. I am delighted over the next hour to tell you whatever tips and tricks and advice and experience and ideas and brainstorming that I possibly can as you embark on what I hope will be a really exciting and transformative new opportunity for you, namely pursuing advanced study in either research or professional program at graduate school. Before I go over what this webinar will involve, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge where I am today. I don't know if you can see, but actually in the back window here is York University. I'm on campus today. And as a professor and a colleague and teacher and someone who lives and works in Takaranto and at York University, it's very important for me to acknowledge where I am today and the history and stories of that land and the people to whom it has belonged and who have lived on it. Since we are doing this virtually, some of you may be in very different parts of the province, the country, or the world. And so I invite you, as I read out York's land acknowledgement, to take a moment to learn a little bit about the history of the space that you're inhabiting right now and the land that you're on. So for my part at York, York University recognizes that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which the university campuses are located. These precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to share and care peaceably for the Great Lakes region. So on this land and in these territories today, with the important relationships, histories, and peoples I've just talked about, I want to invite you to think about a future that you might have in this space and at York University. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to cover today. Here's an overview. I'll start with the basics. What is graduate school? What are the different kinds of diplomas, programs, degrees? How is graduate experience different from undergraduate experience? Then we'll talk a little bit about how to choose a program. I will introduce you to the magical Venn diagram, some other things to think about when choosing a program. We'll talk a little bit about applying, moving from I think I'm interested in graduate school to, oh my goodness, I just submitted my application, and what to do when you're stuck and you have questions. And then at the very end, I'll say a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of graduate school experience. Funding, finding advisors and mentors, thinking about the kind of services and supports that should be available at a university to help you succeed in your degree. And with luck, if I don't run my mouth off too much, we should have time for some questions at the end. So that's what we're going to do. Hopefully, I will tell you at least some of the things that are important and you need to know to go to graduate school that have never been told to you before. But either way, even if you feel like you're experienced at this, it can be helpful to have this overview to remind you what you're doing it, how to do it, why you're doing it, and how to make sure that it's successful. So thank you for spending this time with me, and I look forward to going through it together. Let's start with the basics. What is graduate school? Well, graduate school is actually a short form. It's literally, or often, it's often short for postgraduate, literally after post-graduation, advanced degrees and diploma. It's anything that happens after you get that first post-secondary degree, which is often called your bachelor's degree, bachelor's of science, education, arts, engineering, or business administration, anything else. Graduate school is a kind of specialized study. So it's typically related to either advanced research or advanced professional expertise. If your undergrad was designed to give you a really solid foundation of disciplinary knowledge, critical skills, methods, research, communication skills, and problem solving, a graduate degree allows you to sort of focus in on one part of that and have that knowledge and those skills really shoot much farther at an advanced level. There's roughly three categories of graduate studies. Two are degrees, and the third is sort of graduate diplomas and certificates. So there's two levels of graduate degrees. Your master's degree, which can be a Master of Arts, Science, Engineering, Environmental Science, Education, Law, Business Administration, and so on. So that's your MA, MSc, and so on. Or doctoral level, which comes after the master's. Most doctorates, but not all, are described as PhD, or literally Doctor of Philosophy, but they're not just for philosophers, they're for lots of different kinds of degrees. Those are the two typical post sort of postgraduate, so post-bachelor's degrees that you have. But you can also pursue graduate study, not by doing a degree, but by doing a certificate or a diploma. These are smaller programs. There's fewer requirements, sort of fewer things that you need to do, fewer things that you need to study, but they don't always have the same standing as a degree program. And you don't get to, for example, put them after your name as you might MA or PhD. So graduate school, graduate studies comes after your undergrad or your pre-graduation, and it is more specialized, and it can be a master's, doctorate, or graduate diploma. Typically, it involves some kind of research or research creation component. So some sort of independent project that you take on as a form of research, or an internship, practicum, experiential learning, some sort of work integrated learning that again involves a high level of independence, self-motivation, self-study, and so on. So you are not just advancing in what kind of things you're studying, but the way you are doing that study. It's very much self-motivated, self-directed, either in a research direction or in terms of professional and work skills. What are some of the other differences between grad school and undergrad? Smaller course load. You will probably have fewer courses. An undergrad could be taking 5 or 6 courses at a time, even more. Typically at the graduate degree level, you'll only take 2 or 3 at a time, and the classes will be smaller. The trade-off is, of course, these courses will be more focused, again, much more led by you in a seminar or lab style, and will be much more demanding. Another really interesting difference, in undergrad, your profs teach you. You may have had profs who were very casual and egalitarian. They invited you to use their first name or they spoke to you casually, but there's still an understanding that they're a teacher and you're the student. They have the knowledge, they impart it to you. At this point in graduate school, it is common and the norm that you will work with your profs in their labs, their studio, on their research projects. You may be invited to have a paid position as a research or GA, general assistant, or you may just find yourself contributing to their work. Perhaps they'll bring a draft to class or something for the class work through, or if they're your supervisor for your research project, you may find yourself discussing their research as well. So it's interesting. In undergrad, you're very much the student. If you become a prof, you're wholly the prof. Graduate school is really a little of both. You are both a student, you are also a peer and a colleague at the same time. You are, in a sense, a junior peer of some kind. And there's that sense of being apprenticing into the research or professional expertise that you are studying as a graduate student. You may find more flexibility and focus at graduate school. So more flexibility, you have more choice in your courses, more options. You're not sort of having to take certain gen ed requirements or sort of breadth of area. You're focusing on one discipline and maybe even a subfield in that discipline. So more flexibility, you'll get to sort of skip the electives that didn't appeal to you, but also a lot more focus on a particular research problem, method, idea, question, and so on. Another difference is funding. Many research graduate degrees, so these are degrees that have an independent research component that are directed towards independent research that may someday lead to you deciding you want to become a prof or pursue research in a public-private partnership or some part. These will often come with some sort of funding for students in fellowship form, in employment as a TA or a graduate assistant, or some combination of the two. There's a lot more autonomy and responsibility at the graduate level. You have control over how you progress. There's a little bit less handholding. There's still lots of reminders of when certain milestones are due and expected and so on, but it's understood that you do more of the work yourself independently, and that's part of the autonomy and responsibility. And remember, I sort of said you're both student and peer or colleague. You'll also find that you have a different relationship to your program and even your department as a graduate student as you did in undergrad. As an undergrad, it may have felt that the professors were very much doing their own thing over there, and you would encounter them in class. There might be certain events they'd come to, but that was it. As a graduate student, it's understood, especially in research programs, that you are joining this program or this department's community and culture. You may be invited to talks, workshops, colloquia. So those are speaker series. You may be invited to participate in conferences. You may even be able to sit on certain department or program committees if there's a graduate student representative on those committees. So again, there's a sense in which you're being brought into the world of your profs in a way that you wouldn't have been as an undergrad. So that's sort of what graduate study has in common. Let us just move forward to talk about like why. Why would you choose to go to graduate school? So why would you move forward with this? I want to apologize about the last slide. That seems to have jumped in from a different webinar, and I'm not sure why. I actually taught 2 webinars today. The other one was on the statement of interest. If you're interested in learning more about a statement of interest, you can find another webinar about that on our YouTube page. But for now, I want to stay focused on this webinar's topic. So I've told you a little bit about the difference between undergrad and graduate study. The obvious question, the big question at this point is, okay, why would you go on to do graduate school? And, you know, that's one that some of you may already know the answer to in your heart. I know why I went to do graduate school. I can't answer why everyone goes to graduate school, but there are a number of advantages, opportunities, and really meaningful experiences that come with it. One is because you love this area, this topic, because you are passionate about it as a researcher or as a professional expert, because you're not done in some real sense. The skills, capacities, methods, sort of personal strengths that you built as an undergrad set you up very well to do a number of things, but you've realized there is something about learning and teaching and pursuing socially engaged questions, whether as an advanced expert in a profession or as a researcher trying to solve some social problem or some puzzle, that just grabs you and keeps you wanting to work on it. You may also have career ideas in mind for which you need an advanced degree. Some careers in the public or the private sector require that people be master's level educated. Certain research careers would definitely require a doctorate, or you may be wishing to prepare for a career in law or medical school, and you believe that your foundation would be better served if you had a graduate level degree first. So there's lots of reasons to consider going to graduate school. But no one just goes to graduate school in general. You need to choose a particular program. And the question is, why pursue a graduate degree in this? And that may be difficult. If you're a very good student or a very curious student, you may find that you're interested in a number of your classes. Perhaps you really love psychology, but you've also really been drawn to your art history course. And at the same time, you're getting advice from friends or family that it's important to continue with those advanced economics or maybe accounting courses that you're taking so that you can have a sort of practical career that could be applied in a number of directions. So why go to graduate school, and how do you decide what kind of field to go into? This is where I get into what I called the magical Venn diagram earlier. So what is the magical Venn diagram? How do I choose a particular graduate program? How do I say, yes, I want to pursue graduate school in this topic or field? This is it. Frankly, you should only go to graduate school in something that you have some aptitude for, that you are good at or you are capable of becoming good at, because no one starts out excellent, that you find it makes sense to you, you're able to do well in that field. You realize you are as you gain skills and go on in more advanced ways, you find that your brain works the way this subject works, the research methods make sense to you, or the particular disciplinary norms, the way people in this field do things make sense to you, and you're good at it. Graduate school is hard, and it's a good idea to pursue it in something that you're good at. But now we come down to sort of the left side of the Venn diagram, because graduate school is hard, it's not short, and it's very self-driven. If you're not doing something that interests you, that's also going to be a challenge. It's going to be harder to make yourself show up and do it, particularly when things get really tough, or when the research is long and engaged, or perhaps the writing is difficult. you need to make sure you have that interest, that passion for the subject to some degree, so that you can motivate yourself to keep going when it gets tough. And then, of course, life doesn't stop at graduate school. There's a question of what to do in the future. And for many of you, you have already made sacrifices to get to this point in your educational career. You are considering further sacrifices in going to graduate school. You may be thinking about tuition, or even if you know that the program that you're interested in would be funded, it requires putting off a career for a few years, not earning the kind of money you would otherwise. You want to see, what is my long-term capability here? What are the chances that if I do a PhD in history at this program, I will get a long-term career as a historian of some kind, that I will be able to put this PhD to work, or I will be able to use the skills in a meaningful way for me, even if I don't end up in exactly that field. I end up maybe working at an archives or involved in some sort of government project or some other career that allows me to fulfill, to to see myself as putting that degree to use in some way. So how do you choose a program? Obviously, the sweet spot right at the middle of this diagram is that triangle in the middle, where you choose a program where you have the aptitude, the interest, and a future. That's the dream. It's not always possible. And I'm not saying only choose programs where you hit right in the bullseye of this degree, of this diagram. But I am saying think about the trade offs involved the further you drift from it. So I know people who have pushed past real challenges in a field to become experts because they are passionate about it and they saw a future for themselves, even though they didn't naturally have an aptitude. They had to work twice as hard. They had to take on twice as much. Maybe they had to make sure they were getting extra support, looking into mentors, working twice as hard as everyone else, but they pushed past a sort of misfit between their initial aptitude and what was being required in order to pursue their interest for a future. Or perhaps you are a very practical person and you understand that all work, well, you'll like it some days and you won't, and you're less interested in pursuing a passion or an interest and more interested in figuring out what of the things you are good at do you see a future in. So you might push to that side of the diagram a little bit. And of course, for many of us, we can't know the future. You could do the most practical thing in the world and AI comes along and changes it. And you know that for you, if you are not engaged in something you are good at and passionate about, it doesn't matter whether or not there's a future, because that's not a future you want to choose. And then you may find yourself sitting more on the aptitude or interest side of the diagram. What I would say is try and have at least two of these. And the more you can cultivate some level of all three, the easier you will find your graduate school experience. But at the very least, this diagram helps you think about asking the kind of question that's useful before you take the step to go to graduate school. So that's how you might choose a field. How do you start to figure out what kind of program is the right fit? What should I look for in knowing that this program at this university in this place is right for me? Take a look at the program structure. What kind of courses are being taught? How many courses are being taught? What kind of supports do they have for students taking courses? What sort of opportunities are available? Do they support field work? Are there work placements? Do I have the opportunity to do an independent research project, like an MRP, which is a smaller master's research project, major research project, or a bigger thesis or dissertation? Do I have the opportunity to pursue research creation? Can I do some sort of creative work that involves scholarship as well as expresses my creativity? What are the requirements for this program? Do I meet the requirements? Could I get in? So take a look at the program structure. Take a look at the research faculty listed under this program. What are their interests? Do they match mine in some way, or are they in a totally different part of the field? If I'm only interested in microeconomics and I apply to a program that mostly specializes in macroeconomics, that's not going to be a good fit for me. What's their availability? Now, this may take some work because not every program lists who's on sabbatical or whatever on their website, but we'll get to how to ask questions. It would be worth reaching out to the program to say, does so-and-so, are they accepting students right now, right? To the professor themselves to ask. What kind of experiences are possible with these faculty members? Do they take on RAs? Do they take on students? What kind of funding do they have? That's particularly important in STEM fields where your graduate funding may come in part from a faculty's research funding. It's worth finding out about the reputation of a program. If there are standings or rankings in your field, those can tell you something, but not everything about a particular program. Think of them as more data rather than the final authoritative decision, because it's also, you know, how a program at sort of the broadest level is ranked is going to matter much less than what particular faculty members you want to work on or what it's like for the kind of question or problem you want to address in your work. And you'll want to talk to other experts, your current profs, your mentors, other people in the field. One thing I always recommend is seeing if you can talk to current students in a program to find out what it's like to be in that program. Again, we're going to talk to how to ask questions, but don't be afraid to write to a program and say, can you introduce me to any current master's students? I'd like to hear about their experiences. The kind of questions you might want to ask are, how long do students typically take to finish a PhD in this program? What do your graduates typically do? Do they get jobs in the field? Do they go on to do other degrees? Can I talk to students to see what it's been like to have so and so as a supervisor or to be halfway through their PhD in this program? These are all questions that give you really important information about what you're getting into. And I encourage you not to shy away from the opportunity to ask them. Keep in mind, in some fields, most notably some STEM fields and some fine arts, you will need to have agreement from a supervisor or an advisor that they will be your supervisor before you start. In other fields, most humanities, social sciences, education, that comes later. You could express interest in working with someone, but you don't necessarily have to have their agreement that they'll be your supervisor before you start the program. So what I described in this first paragraph for finding the right fit is all academic things to look for. Program structure, faculty, reputation, these all tell you things about studying in this program. But never forget you're a whole person. You have a body, you have feelings, you have emotions, you have needs. You need to take care of these. So it's also worth looking into some other material considerations. What is the tuition level at this school like? Can you afford it? What kind of opportunities can you take to pay for it? What funding opportunities are available? In Canada, for the most part, research degrees, so those that have a research project or sort of um, ongoing academic or scholarly trajectory, typically come with some sort of funding. And professional graduate degrees, those that are typically what's called a terminal degree, the last degree you do, and don't necessarily lead to a research career, but are tied to advancement in a particular profession. So example of a research degree would be like a PhD in philosophy or a master's in physics or a master's degree in economics or cinema and media studies or art history or something like that. And a professional degree would be an MBA or certain kinds of professional law degrees. At York, we offer professional degrees in financial accountability, in human resource management, in biotechnology management. So those are some of the differences. Research degrees typically come with funding. Professional degrees typically don't. It's worth looking at the funding levels, whether it's tied to employment, whether that appeals to you or not, and so on. So figure out the money because fortunately money matters and it will make a difference to what your life is like when you're going through the degree and afterwards. Figure out whether full-time and part-time options are available and which is right for you. And then think about where you're doing the degree. What's your comfort level? What's the culture like? What's the cost of living? All of these things can factor into your decision, particularly if you're trying to decide between two places. And then the last thing I'd say that may be a consideration is what are the institutional values like in the program, in the institution you're going to, maybe even the city, the province, the surrounding area. How do those match with your own understanding of higher education, research, what research is for, what advanced study is for, what intellectual communities are for, what is the fit between those values and your own values, as well as your comfort, your culture, and your cost of living. So those are a lot of things to think about. All the academic stuff, all the material and values questions. How do you find out the answers? Well, the website, program school websites are a great place to start. Your own current professors in that field. So if you're considering going on to do graduate study in biology, talk to your current biology profs to see what they know about different graduate schools. Don't be afraid to talk to faculty and students in the program, to reach out to ask for their email addresses from the program administrator or director, and then to ask them questions. What's it like to work with you? Can you tell me a little bit about the working relationship with you have with your students? You know, do you meet once a month? Do you meet weekly in the lab? What's your expectations around sort of checking in and accountability from other students? What's it like to take classes in this program? Do you feel like you're really part of the department? What kind of support do you as graduate students get from the faculty, and so on? You're also welcome to take a look at rankings and other measures. Again, I encourage you to use these as data, but never as the ultimate or the final authority. So that's how you find the right fit. When you know where you decided you want to go to grad school, and you've decided you know where you want to go, how do you get ready? How do you get ready to apply? And typically we get a lot of questions like, do I need to have a research project fully worked out in advance? Do I need to have a supervisor in advance? Do I need to already have some sort of research scholarship or some sort of funding myself? And the answer to all three of those questions, and this is a little bit annoying, is it depends, and likely not. So typically, no, you don't have to have a fully worked out research project. In fact, if you have a fully worked out research project, you've the only way to get to that point is you're probably halfway through or finished it. And then I'm not quite sure why you need to go to graduate school to do it. So remember, um, just like I say to my kids when they're trying something new, they'll say, but I don't know how to do that. And I'll say, yes, that's the point. Go do it so that you learn how. You don't need to have a fully worked out research project because part of going to graduate school is to learn how to work out a research project. But at, for example, at the PhD level, you might need to have a sort of vague sense of the kind of project you'd like to pursue. Maybe the question you'd like to answer and some idea of the methods or sources or approach you might take to answering it. Or some sort of problem that you know this particular supervisor is working on that you'd like to get involved in and how you might see yourself contributing to that effort or that lab. Do you need a supervisor? Well, it depends. Not in the social sciences and humanities in many fields, more so in a lot of STEM fields. Do you need an external scholarship? For the most part, not for admissions, although of course it's a good idea to do because you may need it to be able to flourish financially at university. It's also at grad school, it's also an excellent opportunity. There are some cases where you will, if you receive an unfunded position from the university, you may need to figure out how to bring in some source of funding, and a home country or institution or funding body may do that for you. But for the most part, these are not things that you would expect to have as a matter of course in applying. Instead, think about what you have in two ways. What are your foundations? So what do you need to go to grad school? A solid background in coursework in the area you're interested in applying in. So try and pick an area that you're good at. That's the aptitude part that you're interested in. So you took a lot of courses in it and that you saw a future in. So you got to know the profs, came to visit them, pursued sort of conversations and so on. That will give you a foundation of coursework. You have a bunch of A's, A minuses, maybe some B pluses in this area, mentors, because you were excited and you cared about it. You talked to profs after class, you worked with them, maybe you were their RA and so on. And you have what could be described as extracurricular curiosity. In some way, you went above and beyond what was expected of you in this field. Now, that might mean you had the opportunity to work as an RA for a prof, or the opportunity to present your research at an undergraduate conference, or to get involved volunteering in an extracurricular way. Maybe you're doing veterinary science and you got to sort of volunteer at vets on weekends. Sometimes people panic about the extracurricular part. And here's what I would say. Extracurricular curiosity is a foundation of interest in graduate school. But there are many ways of expressing and showing it, and there's no one way that's necessary. So it might be that your extracurricular curiosity is expressed by how you went above and beyond in your coursework. The fact that you worked so hard on your essays that you got that A plus, or you were the best in the class, or maybe you won an award for it. Or you can talk about in your statement of interest. You know, I wrote my paper on Black maternal health outcomes in urban hospitals, and I was so interested. This mattered so much to me. I continued to research it on my own time, and I ended up developing this interest further. Your extracurricular curiosity exists however you end up expressing or pursuing it, and there isn't one thing you need to have that proves you were curious enough to go to graduate school. What are some advantages in applying to graduate school? Get feedback on your application. I cannot say this enough. The materials that you submit, make sure someone besides you has looked at them. Ideally, an expert in the field, like one of your current profs or a TA, or even someone else who's applying in the field with you, or someone else in your life who knows about graduate school or academia or something like that. Pursue whatever opportunities you can, but don't panic if not every opportunity you've heard of someone pursuing is available to you. Not everyone will have work experience related to their application. Not everyone will have a research experience for a prof. Not everyone will have had the opportunity to do an honors thesis or to volunteer at a relevant place and so on. But everyone has some opportunity. So figure out what yours is and see how you can capitalize on it. Another advantage is just clarity. Make sure your writing is clear, make sure your purpose is clear, make sure that your statement reads well and your writing sample reads well, and it's easily legible to someone looking at your application to see, yes, I'm interested in graduate school. I know what that's about. I have a sense of what I'm going to do and why I'm able to do it. I've picked the right place, and I have a sense of my long-term trajectory. All of these things will be strengths and advantages in applying. But you have to put them somewhere. So what do you actually need to apply? Typically, I'm going to say typically, these are what go into an application process. All transcripts from your previous institutions. Keep in mind, GPA, grade point average requirements will vary. Most graduate programs require a B+ average or higher. You will need something like a statement of interest or intent or a personal statement or a statement of purpose. It's called different things at different universities. This is a piece of writing that explains what you want to do in grad school, why you're well qualified and well positioned to do it, why the school you're applying to is the right place to do it, and what your long-term goals are. In my webinar on this, I talk about what you want to do, contextualizing the what, why you're well placed to do it, given your background, your strengths and experiences, why the program is the right fit to do it, and what your long-term goals are. In addition to the personal statement, you should include a resume or a curriculum vitae that outlines sort of relevant work experience, volunteer experience, and other significant achievements or opportunities or activities that you've done that showcase everything that I said you need to showcase in the statement of interest. So your personal strengths, your relevant background, your achievements, and your experiences that you think will help you with your master's degree. Now, don't be too precious about this. I've been on a lot of admissions committees over the years. I know not everyone has the chance to be an RA for super fancy research professor X on their very fancy lab doing groundbreaking work. I pay attention if someone managed to go to university and get excellent grades while working part or full time at the same time and potentially juggling other responsibilities. And even more so if they're then involved in their department's undergraduate club or something like that. To me, I see both of these as evidence of curiosity, drive, determination, perseverance, and exactly the kind of personal strengths and skills that you need to succeed in graduate school. Typically, you will be asked to provide some sort of portfolio or a writing sample. If the personal statement shows off who you are, this shows off what you can do in the field. So if you're applying to do a PhD in English, you need to be able to show you're good at English papers, and similar for other fields. For many of you who are applying from outside of Canada as international students, you will be required to provide some form of English language proficiency test score. The requirements for this are available on the York website. I won't go too much into that. And typically you'll be asked to provide 2 or 3 letters of recommendation. For your letters, it should be someone who can speak to the kind of strengths that you are bringing with you to succeed in graduate school. So a prof or a TA who knows you well is ideal. Particularly a prof who can comment on the graduate school experience while also commenting on your performance is ideal, but it should be a professor or a teacher of class who knows you well. Many people will end up choosing a work supervisor as their second or third referee. That does happen and sometimes can be very good, especially if the work is directly tied to your discipline or field or project. But the less it's tied to it, the more I encourage you to try and find academic referees as possible. If you don't have 3 of them, don't panic. Again, we are looking for people who can speak to what's to your particular strengths, and that will vary from person to person. So, why go to graduate school? how do I choose a program? How do I apply? I know I've answered all of that, but I think it's fair to say you've gotten to this point, you still might have a lot of questions. So who will answer your questions? And I hope this next slide is helpful to you because sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. There's all these people at a university, they all have titles. I mean, you just heard my title, and what on earth is a vice provost? I imagine many of you didn't know before, and it's okay. You don't need to know today. Don't worry about it. But we need to be able to answer these questions, and to be able to answer them well, you need to know the right person to ask. So who's going to answer your question? It depends. Is your question an academic question? By that, I mean a question about program details, your requirements, your funding, courses you might take, someone you might work with, how the major research paper works, how the thesis or dissertation works, what academic requirements there are to get into your program. Anything to do with that, ask the GPD or the graduate program director. This is a faculty member who's responsible for running the program. If your question is an administrative question, so you have a question about the deadline, particular forms, how to upload, what the contact info is, something went wrong with the application process, or your referee can't get their letter in, or you sent the referee request form, but it says the letter's in, but the referee says they haven't filled it out yet, or whatever, something that goes wrong with the administrative sort of nuts and bolts process of applying, or you have questions about that process or the deadline or something like that. Then you ask the graduate program assistant. So graduate program director, graduate program assistant. This person is a faculty member. This person is a staff member. They complement each other. They work together to make sure that the program runs. They are equal but equally important. Separate but equally important was the term I was looking for. And if you have an administrative question, please take it to the GPA and not the GPD, the assistant, not the director. Now, if you have a specific research question, which could be anything from, can I work with you on this project? Or would this program be, I'm really interested in this paper you wrote. Is this program a good place to pursue graduate study if I want to work on something related to this paper? Or I'm really interested in atmospheric changes due to carbon capture in this area. Is this something that you or others are working on? Is this the right program for that? Can you recommend who I should talk to? Here, I recommend talking to a faculty member, but someone with that kind of expertise. This person could be a potential advisor. So when I'm not being dean, I am a professor in the philosophy department, and I work on moral, political, and feminist philosophy. And so I recently had someone reach out to me and say, my research interests overlap with yours. I'm interested in this. I'd like to come to York and work with you on this. That is a question for me as a professor and a potential supervisor, not a question for the GPD or the GPA because it's specific to my research. So academic, general question, GPD, administrative question about process forms, deadlines, uploads, the website crashing, any of that, GPA. Specific research question, ask it to the faculty member, particularly if you're considering asking them to be your supervisor. Now, I often get a follow-up question to this, which is, am I allowed to do this? Can I send these emails? And so here you may be wondering, is it okay to email professors I've never met? The answer is yes, it is okay. It doesn't mean they will always answer, and I'm sorry about that. Professors are like everyone else. We have deadlines and projects and lives and multitasking and jobs and bodies and families and crises and so on. And sometimes we do not get through our entire inbox, even things that we care about and really want to answer. I'm sorry when they don't answer, but most of us are doing our best to answer all the questions that come from prospective and current students. And my advice to sort of increase the odds of someone answering, and usually they will, I don't want to alarm you, most of us do. Be polite, be direct, be specific, be concise. Dear Professor so-and-so, I am writing to ask whether you are accepting students for next year, or I am interested in the program here. I work on this. I was wondering, are you teaching any graduate courses next year? Are you accepting students for supervision? Don't, address them, right? Dear so-and-so or dear Professor so-and-so, ideally, because you don't know what their feelings are. Many of us are fine with the first name, but you don't know until it's too late. So start professional and then wait for them to say, please call me first name. Be direct because no one has time. Be specific, be concise. And if they do respond and help you, it's always nice to say thank you. It's amazing how susceptible all of us are to being thanked. And I'm sure you feel that way too. And I hope if you come here and work with them as a research assistant, they always remember to thank you too. So, graduate school, the program, applying, what you need to do, all the questions you need answered. Let's just talk about some nuts and bolts about graduate school before I begin to wrap things up. Tuition and funding. Graduate school costs money. We charge tuition. Tuition and fees, you'll pay tuition and also some additional fees, registration fees, ancillary fees. These may be either offset or covered by a funding package offered by the university. This is true or typical for most positions at research programs, but not necessarily professional ones. And you will learn about any funding package that you were offered when you receive your offer of admission from the university. Funding packages are typically a fellowship. So that's just like money that you get, a sort of scholarship model. This is typical for 1-year master's degrees, or by a combination of fellowship and employment as a teaching assistant or a lab assistant or some other form of graduate administrative assistant. Um, at York, typically master's students receive a fellowship package, and doctoral students in PhD programs receive a funding package that is a combination of a fellowship and employment as a TA or GA, lab or research assistant. Many funded positions. Now, not everyone who goes to York has a funded position. We try and offer as many as we can. Many funded positions will entirely cover your tuition and will make a substantial contribution towards your living expenses. Having said that, please do your research about wherever you're applying, including Toronto. The Faculty of Graduate Studies does have a webpage with some information about the cost of living in Toronto. I encourage you to look into it. It is not cheap. And that is something to keep in mind wherever you're going to school, because as we all know from our own lives and bank balances and the news, costs of living are rising everywhere. The length of your funding depends on the program length. Master's degrees are typically 1 to 2 years in length. Doctoral degrees are typically 4 to 5 years in length. The university you're applying to may have a period of guaranteed, a sort of right to employment, or depending on academic progress. So there may be opportunities beyond that, but it's worth keeping in mind fundamentally when you're accepted to a graduate program, you're accepted to do academic work, and the length of time you are funded or allowed to continue that work will depend on the time that the government body has set is appropriate to do this academic work, and that's called the degree length. So length of funding depends on degree or program length. It is worth researching and understanding your fees and tuition, your funding, and the cost of living so that you know what you're getting yourself into. Graduate school is famously and sort of almost parodied in pop culture as a time of frugality. It is a time where you are apprenticing yourself to a research career. I'm really pleased and proud that at York we are able to offer funding to so many students. At the same time, I'm very aware of what it's like to live in Toronto and the challenges that graduate students anywhere at any university face with rising costs of living. And with that in mind, I encourage you, as well as learning about funding packages, to apply for as many internal and external scholarships and awards as possible. And keep an eye out, because at FGS, we offer sessions on applying for awards and scholarships. So we try and help you do this as much as possible. These can go a long way towards alleviating some of the challenges of living while also going to school full time. More nuts and bolts. So funding is sort of one aspect of it, but you also will need other forms of support than just money while you're in graduate school. As I've said from the beginning, these are challenging forms of advanced academic study. This is independent research or professional preparation. It is autonomous, self-accountable, self-responsible work at a very high level. And it helps to have supports in place, advisors, mentors, resources, and services. So what are these and how can they help you in graduate school? Who are you allowed to ask for help? Well, first of all, you may have a supervisor or an advisor right from the start if you're in STEM. They can absolutely be your first point of contact for help. I'm really struggling with my course load, or I'm having trouble balancing my work as a TA, that's a teaching assistant, and my coursework. What strategies do you recommend, or where can I get help on managing these two? If you don't have a supervisor or you're not assigned an advisor from the beginning, don't panic. There are still people whose job it is to help you. It's okay to ask the graduate program director for help, to tell them, I'm finding the transition from undergrad to grad a lot, or I think I need help in this area. You can talk to the course directors for the courses you're taking. As I said, these will be smaller, more intimate courses. So there's a chance to stay at the end and say, I've always been a really good student. I don't know what's happening. I'm using the same strategies and habits, but I'm really struggling. Do you have advice for me in your course? You can talk to other faculty members. If you met someone and you click with them, don't be afraid to ask them if you can come to their office hours or if you can make an appointment to talk to them. But you don't just have to talk to faculty members. And in fact, I encourage you not just to talk to faculty members. A wonderful source of insight and help can be other students in your program. They've already gone through this or they're going through it with you. They're kind of having the lived experience. They'll have a lot to say. Your graduate student association. So at the program or department level, you might have a subject area GSA, but at York, we have a wonderful graduate student association called YUGSA, the York University Graduate Student Association. They're an incredible body for advocacy, representation, and support, and they can help you with problems that may arise. You also, as a employed teaching assistant or graduate assistant, so that's a lab or research assistant, you have a union, QP 3903. They are also here for you and to support you in a number of ways and have programs, resources, even funds that you can apply to. So they are also worth checking out and keeping in mind. And then there's us, the Faculty of Graduate Studies, my office, and all the extraordinary people who work here alongside me and who help me, and I help them as best we can. So keep in mind, we have funding advisors who can give you advice or answer questions about, my tuition is coming out of my account. When does my paycheck come in? How do I manage this? What can I expect? Wellness services. I cannot say enough about getting wellness services early and often, getting appointments as you need, keeping an eye out for wellness certificates or workshops or training programs you can do to help you get through what is a very challenging endeavor. We have scholarships and research services. We have student affairs. We have lots of different bodies who are here to help you with the academic, extracurricular, research, material, or personal wellness aspect of your graduate life. And at York, beyond the Faculty of Graduate Studies, there are a lot of other services for you. The librarians at York University Libraries are the most underused resource on campus, and they know so much about the most up-to-date research methods, online research archives, or other sorts of repositories. They will know so much about managing data, dealing with data, the best practices around ethics of research and data, and so on. There are writing centers at York for graduate students as well as undergraduate, career services, and so important, student accessibility services. If you are disabled, if you are neurodivergent, if you are dealing with particular challenges, mental or emotional or physical, that you think will impact your graduate study, go to student accessibility services right away. Find out what resources, supports, and accommodations are available to you. Make sure you do what you need to do to get access to them and continue to have access to them throughout your degree. It is your right to have this an equivalent kind of educational experience to those who aren't facing whatever challenge you are, but that's only possible to the best of our abilities if you go to student accessibility and figure out what to do to get what you need. That was all quite heavy and serious, and I just want to take a moment to advocate for the importance of fun in graduate school and beyond. So please also keep an eye on clubs, associations, intramural sports, meditation retreats, dances, silly times, whatever it is you need to make sure that you stay a human and a whole person, because going to graduate school was the best experience of my life. It was also a very difficult one. I did it twice. I did a master's and I did a PhD. And both times it was inspiring and transformative and exciting and very, very hard. So in lots of ways, personally, professionally, emotionally, intellectually. And so get the supports you need, ask the questions you need to ask, and please don't forget to have fun. I'm so glad I could tell you a little bit about graduate school. I hope I told you the things you know and answered the things they didn't tell you. But just in case, we have about 10 minutes or so for questions. So if there's anything I forgot, I will call on my colleague Eileen to ask your questions so I can answer them. Thank you.